you'll never get over it. You'll get through it. I was born into fear around death and dying. I was too young. I couldn't go to the hospital and say goodbye. I couldn't go to the memorial. I was too young to handle it. And it left me with this deep curiosity and this yearning to understand. And I didn't really understand that I was longing to understand. But as I started to lose more people, I wanted to go. I wanted to be there at the end. I had this like desire to, if someone was sick, to be with them at the end. And I couldn't deny it. My name's Barbie Herron Conkling, and I am a certified death doula / death midwife. I got my certification in 2019. And in 2019, after losing, I had already lost a brother in 2008. And in 2019, my brother was on life support, my second brother. And I just felt so drawn to hold space for his soul in the hospital. And I remember like standing over him, just praying for his soul to have the wisdom to remember what to do. And I remember that feeling of idling in neutral. I can't energetically pull him here or, ask him to stay or, ask him to leave. Like it was just kind of holding that space, idling in neutral. And he pulled through. And after that, it was undeniable. It was like my soul guides were like, this is the service work that you need to go out into the world and do. I knew I could sit with death. I could sit with dying. My son was diagnosed with a terminal illness when he was 4 years old. And in 2019, he was 28 at that time. And it had been this long road of chemo and surgeries and long hospital stays. And, he had made it way beyond, what we thought. So I think intuitively, I also knew that I needed to prep myself to hold space for him and learn everything I needed to learn and just explore, what this was. And, so from 2019 to today, the last 5 years, I worked in hospice and I helped, many. I didn't help them die. I held their hand as they walked to the veil, and I held space for the family and for their souls, and really got comfortable in that position. And in December 17th this last year of 2023, my son transitioned. I got to walk him to the veil and create ceremony and beauty around that. So much of the work that I do and the service work that I feel called to do is to reclaim the ceremony and the ritual back into our lives. We handed that to the Western world a century ago, and these are our death rites, and these are our ceremonial rites, and changing the narrative, one person at a time energetically, like bringing people in and showing them, this new experience that really was foreign to my generation. And the younger generation now, like this is what they're learning, and this is what they will be able to pass on, to their children. Living legacies, living memorials, we did all that. 2 of my stepdads passed away last month. And, that was something that I just feel is so important to leave behind, and it's prepping so you're not hit with a ton of bricks after the fact. It almost feels like you're at the airport, you're with your passenger who's about to take flight. You get to hug them. You get to check their luggage. You get to make sure they've got their jacket. You get to say goodbye. Then they're on the airplane, trays up, seatbelts on, and then they take off. And it's like you've wished them well. You've double checked to make sure they've got everything they need. And it's not this abrupt feeling as opposed to if someone, left the house in the middle of the night and decided to go fly to Europe and you're like, wait, where'd they go? It's a silly analogy, but I use it because when someone's on the runway, I let them know, when they're transitioning. I kind of use that reference in a gentle way with the family around, like, okay, they're on the runway right now, like seatbelts fastened and they're about to take flight, and we're going to wish them well. And, there's going to be a little turbulence in the air, and that's okay. But, soon enough, it's going to be smooth sailing. So let's all wish them well and, an amazing trip. They're about to go on this amazing trip. So that piece of it, I love, and I know I'm good at it. It's this gentle understanding where just the leading up to, and then the ceremony afterwards is one of my favorite. It's honoring the vessel, and it really provides healing and closure. And I share this not from a place of reading it in a textbook or doing it with someone else. I did this with my child. I did this with my child, and I think that's so important to highlight because this is the worst loss any parent could ever walk through. And the way that we did it left us with so much peace and so much healing. So like I sit in this seat from experience of the worst thing that could ever happen to a parent. And because of what we did, we're all okay. And so I can bring that experience into the work that I do and share that. It's like honoring him and bathing him and anointing him and bringing earth to his body and sitting with him for as long as we need, and giving people the space to find that closure instead of, not getting to see them and then going into an open casket embalmment, situation where you're like, what is this? Those are our death rites. And that's the ceremony that we reclaimed. And because of that, we're so much more healed. The different advice, that what we did with my brothers, there was no goodbye. There was no making sure they had their jackets before they boarded the plane. There was none of that. It was they were here and then they were gone. So what I invited my family in to do was, just one thing was to write letters and the 5 things, please forgive me, I forgive you, I love you, thank you, goodbye. And whatever that looked like in an individual letter, it was the closure letter. And then we did, ceremonies. So we did a fire ceremony where we offered tobacco and the letter and just, gave it to him in spirit. I do a lot of healing work with, bereaved parents. Writing letters is probably the biggest form of healing that I help them work through, whether it's a misdiagnosis from a doctor or malpractice or negligence or whatever it is, it's writing it and then offering it to the universe and releasing it. And I do full moon ceremonies every single full moon. So a lot of it is releasing, and majority of my circle are parents who have lost children. So we do a lot of work around, I have a medicine wheel up on the hill. And so we go in and pick our direction and put our letters and bring pictures of our loved ones and make our offerings and releasing on the full moon. So there are so many ways, and I really preface to people that this didn't happen to you, this happened for you. So, this happened to us and we have a choice. The choice is to put the grief rocks in the backpack and play victim that this happened to us, or take the backpack off, one by one, take the rocks out and understand that each rock was a lesson and this happened for us, for our growth. So it's, taking that and just diving layer by layer deeper, understanding what the deep lessons were, what we had to learn from this experience. And then with that lesson, how are we going to show up for the world, and how are we going to show up and be of service and give back in that way? So it's kind of flipping the script as, with my mom, especially, it was really hard for her. Her narrative is, I lost 2 boys and this happened to me. So I've been working a lot with her, like, no, this happened for you. How are you going to show up now because of this? This is what it's all about. It's turning around and being of service because of this. And, I thank my son all the time for giving me this opportunity to feel what I felt and experience what I felt on the deepest level, to be able to turn around and be of service in this capacity, because no one can say you don't know what it's like. Yeah, I do. I've lost a lot of people very close to me, and it hurts. I miss them, but it's not debilitating. I'm not completely there are moments of feeling paralyzed, but because of the closure and the ceremony and the work that, we continue to do around it, we're free. Basically, when you have a memorial And everyone gets up and they're crying and they're weepy and they're saying all these beautiful things about you, but you're not there to hear it. And you're not there to experience the love being shared about you. And so, first the conversation of, okay, you're dying. We're with you. We're here. Let's switch this from life support to death support. And we're going to support you in this. The living memorial, why don't we throw a celebration of your life while you're still here, and you can receive all the hugs, you can receive all the love, you can give, it's like the closure for you, for all these people who, were important in your life, and for them, so they know they have that last thing, because so many people are left with, I wish I would have told them XYZ, but I couldn't address the fact that they were dying because it was so uncomfortable and I didn't want them to feel like I wished they were dying, or, it's that awkward conversation. So it's ripping the Band-Aid off. This is what's happening. We invite you all in to let him know, or to let her know, how much they're loved. And so with Lions, there were like 200 people here, and it was like, what do you want to eat? Like, what's your favorite? We're going to have all your favorite foods. So we literally, he made a list. We had all his favorite foods, and every single person there and there were tears. It was emotional, and he had to come inside and take breaks. But everyone got to let him know how he impacted them and how much they love him. And they, wish him, peace on his transition and his journey. And it was so beautiful, and everyone left there they got to say the final words that they needed to say for their own closure. And he got to hear, everything that he needed to hear to know that he can now leave. I believe, this is my belief, and not everyone believes it, but I believe before we come here as souls, we're sitting at this contract table, with divine energy, and we're like, okay, Lion's like, I'm going to come here with Gardner syndrome. It's going to be a weird genetic mutation, but it didn't come from mom or dad. It's 1 in 3 million or 300 million was his statistics. There's going to be all these lessons along the way. And I am at that contract table. I'm like, I'm going to be your mom. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. It's like we signed up for it. And with my brothers, I'm going to be your sister. You guys are going to die tragically at this time. And my job is to learn how to respond to that grief. That's going to be my lesson. How am I going to respond afterwards? And, with my brothers, it was, understanding that this is exactly as it was supposed to be, whether it's you can't wrap your head around it. I feel so strongly that their souls knew exactly when they were going to go and how they were going to go. And there's something deeper underneath it for all of us. So for me, I'm always looking at what am I supposed to learn from this? Compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, surrender. There's all these key things that show up, and I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to go deeper into that lesson. And so, I look at it as this opportunity for growth. It's the permanence within the impermanence. Life is so impermanent, but their loss feels permanent. So it's merging those two and understanding it, and knowing that my time here is so short, and I'm right behind them, and now they're in the spirit world, rooting us on. So it's just kind of understanding this deeper soul, the soul story, that this is not all it. This is the perfect way of changing the narrative. The more podcasts, the more conversations, the more, where it becomes you see it pop up and you're like, whoa, there's a lot of conversation about death happening. Maybe this is something I need to look into. And that's why I love that your generation is showing up, opening the dialogue to people, normalizing it. So I think, social media, we live in this is the world we live in. It's this tech, savvy world where this is where people go to. So that's really important. A lot of people, very close to me have said death has been the scariest thing ever in my life. And I can't I can't go to a funeral. Like, their biggest anxiety is, the thought of losing someone they love. And so I just think like experiencing Lion, how we invited so many people into our house while he was transitioning. The last week, it's like we had so many people in this house coming in to say goodbye. We did the living memorial for him. And as he was transitioning, I was the only one in the room. But once after 30 minutes, we invited everyone in. So, that ripple effect, it's the pebble in the pond, right? All those people who had this paralyzing fear over death and dying now have had this different experience, and now they can talk about it. So they're changing the narrative. Like I sat with someone, I actually bathed a body. I never thought I would bathe a dead body, and it was so beautiful and it was so healing. And so it's really the pebble in the pond, like we do our work, people are going to see it. We're going to invite people in to have these conversations. And now in this house, death is a huge conversation in this house. And now people come over and want to talk about it. All his friends come over still like 4 times a week. And we talk about death and dying, and we talk about that experience. And they've all shared with me like their life has changed in that way. Now, this is a topic that they're comfortable to talk about. And they know what to do when a loved one in their life is ready to go. So I think it's just, in books too, Many Lives, Many Masters, I always like start with that. Like I encourage people to go read a little bit of Brian Weiss, and then, the 5 invitations, and, just kind of suggest some, some literature, and just kind of open their eyes to know that, we're just borrowing these bodies for a short period of time, and none of us make it out alive. None of us make it out alive. And it's like whoever has the ticket up next, it's not good or bad, right or wrong. They're just up next. So we get to like honor, them taking flight, going home. You'll never get over it. You'll get through it, right? You're never going to I'll never get over the loss of my son, but I'm going to get through it. And one thing that, the closure is, it's like the circle completing, right? His journey in that physical body is complete. That's the closure. Like his body no longer exists. It didn't serve him any longer. It didn't need to hold his spirit any longer. So we're going to honor the journey that he had in that body in this lifetime. And that's the closure. Just from my experience. And this is like, if I wasn't sitting in the seat that I was sitting, and I had read, things in hospice, hospice care, what to say and what not to say, it may sound different than what I'm going to share with you. I think you get bombarded, with messages, and just seeing that people are there, not trying to fix it. I think that's the key. Don't come in and try and fix the emotion. The emotion cannot be fixed. Grief cannot be fixed by anyone. And it's human nature to want to come in and make someone feel better, right? Like, and this just can't, it doesn't work that way. When you're in deep grief, you need to feel the grief. And so the messages that were the most important to me were just people letting me know that they were there. My brain wasn't in a position to operate, let me know what you need. I didn't know what I needed. I know I needed to like get out of bed and drink water and go to the bathroom. It's like, it was just the most basic thing. So like, I didn't have the capacity to even like think what I needed. So the outer circle kind of came in and created the meal train and created, a grocery list of, what I needed. So there were people that handled that, but I think just people letting me know, like, I love you, and I'm here when you're ready. And it's like, I read those, I took them to heart. I didn't have to take action. I wasn't, offended that people were trying to justify him leaving. My husband was the best, because as we walked through this, he never once tried to fix the emotion. He just held space for my grief and for my loss and where I was in like the journey. He just knew when I needed a hug. He knew when I needed time alone. I think that's key. I think it's just letting people know that you're here when, or if you need them, and just kind of leave it. and let the outer circle come in and do the, heavy lifting of like the food and the toilet paper and whatever's needed in the house, because your mind can't. I would get random, text message of Uber Eats or Grubhub gift cards. And it was like, thank you. That's a meal. I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to invite anyone in my house, and the unannounced like show ups were really challenging, where it's like, I don't have the capacity to like grieve with you, so you kind of need that sacred privacy to feel what you need to feel without having an audience. That was my experience. And I would get a text message, there's a tray of cookies, on your doorstep. And that was like, thank you. You didn't knock, you didn't felt the need to come in. You just did this out of like an act of love and kindness. So those little things were really helpful. And then when I was ready, I let people know I'm kind of coming out from under the rock. And it's, one at a time, maybe a walk or it wasn't a big bombardment. I couldn't hold that space. So it's just kind of like people meeting me where I was at was important. I'm looking at this gorgeous picture of my son right now. And, his message, and I don't know if you knew him, but we're just going to share a little bit about his message. So he lived with a terminal illness for 27 years. And it didn't stop him. And he lived so big and he died so big. And I think it's important to reference that people truly die the way that they lived. And I've experienced that, if there was peace and closure at the end of their life, it's this, very peaceful transition. But he was such a big energy. And throughout his terminal illness, he had these little messages: positive mental attitude, heaven ain't ready, courage shines from within. He created this clothing line, and he was such a teacher in so many ways, because he, would leave chemo with ports and pick lines and go for the weekend motocross riding, or, go surfing with active tumors in a port, and go swimming with great white sharks. And nothing stopped him because he didn't put the rocks in his backpack, right? He didn't let his illness define who he was. He lived life no matter what. And I think anybody, I don't know if our conversation is about me being a death doula, helping people transition, or just how to live in grief, who knows? But I hold on to his energy of how he lived, most of his life in and out of the hospitals, over 50 surgeries, just major. But within that was like an Abercrombie model. And, he just was like, who are you? So, I sit here and talk about his story and talk about the beauty of his transition and the lessons in his illness, with a smile, and so much love in my heart, because he showed me how to be so gracious and how to be so grateful, at every day. He used to always say, every day is a gift, Mama. Every day is a gift. And so if I can share one little message, within that space, that, live like lion, live like lion. He knew his time was short. It didn't stop him. He pushed himself and lived every day beyond, what most people in 90 years could live. And so, yeah, I would love for that to be the message, just live your life, put the backpack down. It's not for you to carry. Our job is to learn what we came here to learn, keep our hearts soft and open, and know that every day is a gift.